project I'm going to show you right now is a third grade project. It's for value. What you're going to need for this project is these two worksheets printed onto cardstock. The easiest way to probably do that is to print the worksheets from home just on white paper and then take it to the school and put the cardstock in the printers and just run it on cardstock. So what you're going to need for this is each student needs both worksheets, and then you're going to need paint. And for paint, the colors that you want to work with are a good medium valued paint. So these would all work well, something with that you could easily darken and lighten. So yellow might be a little bit tricky. You could probably do orange, but you don't want to start with a really dark, like a dark navy blue or something like that, because you wouldn't be able to easily lighten or darken it. So I'm going to use green, and then you're going to need some brown tempera paint as well. And what they're going to be doing in this project is they're going to be making tints and shades. So a tint is when you mix a color with white, and a shade is when you mix a color with black. I'm going to work on the page 1 first. This is making tints, and this is where I'm going to start. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to put just a little bit of paint on my paper plate or my palette here. Really, I would not go more than that. The trick with these tints is that it takes quite a bit of white to dark or to lighten the paint. So you're going to need just a little bit of the color and then quite a bit of white. I failed to mention that you also need white and black paint. So what you're going to do is the first scoop of ice cream, you're just going to paint it just the straight color of paint. You can tell the kids they do not have to stay in the lines. They can just quickly paint the scoop of ice cream because they're going to be cutting it out and they can still see the lines. So just quickly paint it. So the next thing that they're going to do is they're going to add white to their green. And like I said, the white, making the tints, takes quite a bit more of the white than you might think. So give it a fair amount of white until you think that color looks lighter. If they want, they can kind of test it. You know what, I think it could be a little bit lighter, so I'm gonna put a little bit more white in. It looked too similar right here, so I'm just gonna mix a little bit more in. And you can kind of remind them, they wanna mix in a small area. If they mix the paint all over that paper plate, they're gonna run out of paint. So kind of keep it in a small area. Okay, so I think we're a little bit lighter. And so I'm gonna paint this next one, and we're definitely lighter. Like I said, you don't have to stay in the lines, just paint that ice cream cone. And then I'm gonna make it even lighter. So I'm gonna grab another pretty good scoop of white and mix it in. That looks lighter. So I'm gonna paint this one. Okay, so you can see that by making the tints, it's getting lighter and lighter. And then the last one, I'm gonna add a big scoop of white. Okay, so now I have done my tints. One thing, especially if they're gonna be painting just over the line, that's fine. They just need to make sure they're not putting so much paint on that it covers the lines, that they can't see them, but it should be fine. And then I'm going to move on to the shade. So shade is by adding black to a color. And what I would do is, now that I would give them new paint for that. They can keep the same plate if they haven't made a big mess. In fact, even if the paint's everywhere, it's fine. They're working with the same colors. So I'm going to put a little bit more green. And this time I'm going to give myself a little bit more green because the green, or the shades, they go a little bit quicker. Whereas the whites, we had to add a fair amount of white. the black, you really don't need to give them much black at all. So I'm just gonna quickly rinse off my brush. I'm gonna rinse off my brush so that I can start with the nice dark green without any white in it. Okay. So now I'm gonna work on my shades. So a shade, we've already done the medium value where we didn't add black or white on the other page, so this one. And they're just gonna, if they follow the instructions next to each scoop on both pages, they'll be fine. So what I'm gonna do, using the black, whereas I used pretty big scoops of white, the black, you don't need to add nearly as much. It darkens a lot quicker. Okay, so I've got a darker shade here, and I'm gonna paint that scoop. And then I'm gonna keep darkening 2 more times. So there we've made all the tints and shades that we're gonna make. And I'm gonna rinse out my brush 1 more time. And all we have left to do now is the ice cream cone. So you just need to give them a tiny bit of brown. Okay, so now I have both of my worksheets done. This is the one where we made tints by adding white. This is the one where we made shades by adding black. And as you can see how they darken and then they lighten this direction. So this project, you could do it in 2 days because this paint does need to dry, but really, they dry really quickly. These tints are almost dry. So you could even, I often like to set up my art docent lesson with recess in the middle or lunch in the middle, and that way this can dry for just a few minutes and then can get going. Like I said though, these are pretty much, they're a little bit tacky, but they're mostly dry. So now we're gonna finish up our value project for 3rd grade. So what the students are gonna do now is they're gonna cut each of the scoops out on the ice cream cone, and then they'll stack them. So first, they've just gotta get them all cut out. Now, if they get to this last one or one of the darker ones and they can't see the lines very well, they can always take one of their other ones and trace it with a pencil and then cut it out if they can't quite see those lines. I can still see mine, so I'm just gonna cut it out. Okay, so I have all my pieces cut out, and now you're gonna use a large piece of 12 by 18 paper, and the first thing they're gonna do is have them glue their ice cream cone at the bottom. So you can use a glue stick, that's fine. I prefer to use a cup of Elmer's school glue and a paintbrush. You can put glue in these and it will stay liquid and won't dry out for months and months as long as you put the lid back on them. And when the lid does, or when the glue finally does dry out, you just peel it right out of the cup and refill them. It is my favorite way to glue with the kids. It sticks better than a glue stick and isn't as messy as the squirt glue. So they're just gonna put the cone at the very bottom. Now before they glue, have them stack their ice cream scoops from darkest to lightest. And they may need to hold them up and kind of figure it out. And that looks about right. So now I would have them just set them to the side a little bit, just so that they stay in order, and then just glue one at a time. So that's the finished product of the 3rd grade value. If you want, you can take it one step further. You don't have to, in fact, I usually don't, but just in case you really want to, you can get out the oil pastels and they can add a few details, like they could add a cherry on the top. And then they could also add some sprinkles to the ice cream. Like I said, that last step is totally optional. It just adds a little bit of just extra detail if you want to get out the oil pastels and just have them add a few quick details. But again, this is the 3rd grade project for color value.